Assalamu alaikum. This is not a message as much as it's a testimony to the Sudanese people, their national community, and the Council of the Militant Coup in Sudan. I state the following as a Sudanese activist and a citizen. I do not belong to any party, as many of you might know. Not that it's something to be ashamed of, but it is the truth nevertheless. And having said that, I certainly don't belong to the Force of Freedom and Change, the FFC, nor the Sudanese Professional Association, the SPA. Before taking you back to Monday, 25th of October 2021, the day where the militant coup under the leadership of Al-Burhan and Hemeti was conducted against the Prime Minister, Mr. Hamdok, and his government, allow me to digress further and take you back to 1958, where it all started. 1958 was the year in which the first militant coup occurred in Sudan. In 1969 was the second militant coup, and in 1989 was the third one. So it's very obvious to say that what Al-Burhan and Hemeti have done was no different from the militant behavior throughout the history of modern Sudan. But what is not so obvious to state, and you have to pay very close attention to grasp, is that every time we had a transitional period in Sudan, the dictatorship that came afterwards lasted longer than its predecessor, and vice versa regarding transitional periods in Sudan. Each transitional period was shorter than the previous one. After 1964 revolution, the transitional period lasted about 5 years, whilst the dictatorship that took on power lasted about 16 years in office. In 1985, the transitional period lasted about 5 years, while the dictatorship that succeeded that transitional period lasted about 30 years. And now, this transitional period did not even hold up to 3 years until we had another dictator who tried to restrain it. As if every revolution in Sudan is meant to be rewarded with longer and much worse dictatorship. 65 years. 65 years since independence, 55 years of which militants were in office. Only 10 years civilians had the right to govern themselves. And even that right was given to them during transitional periods only. Exceptional times, they say. So with this insight to our political Sudanese history, the fact that Al-Burhan is trying to justify the militant coup by claiming that he's rectifying the path of the revolution is just preposterous and quite frankly absurd. Now that you have an insight to our militant history, I think you can tell where his mindset derived from. I mean, in what world does a militant coup become the rectifying process of a revolution that occurred in the first place to stop such practices from ever happening again? It is needless to say that what Al-Burhan has done is nothing more than a stab in the back of both the Sudanese people and his partners in office. Is it not suspicious to conduct a militant coup when it's only a matter of 1 month or less from handing over the Sovereignty Council head position to the civilians? The truth is that Al-Burhan is nothing more than an extension for the Muslim Brotherhood, or for the Muslim Brotherhood regime, especially that two of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders tweeted 12 hours prior to the coup, and I quote, "Tomorrow is a bright new day. We will name our new government. Get ready." As an activist and a very close observer to the political view in Sudan, I do admit that the FFC performance was not at its best. There was political share of power among the FFC parties. However, there have been many wrongdoings, such as harnessing the inflation rates, imposing peace all over Sudan, re-engaging with the international community after long and dark ages of sequesterness due to the past regime of Muslim Brotherhood, let alone encouraging the freedom of speech and much more. So Even if the FFC hypothetically mismanaged a couple of issues, that does not justify by any means the militant coup of Al-Burhan. Nothing does. Not to mention that the FFC parties were 30 years out of political practice realms. And as many of you might know, that democracy can only be learned by practice it. They were not given enough time to do so. And as far as the Militant Coup Council, I do recall a wise man who once said that the way you take on power determines the way that you're going to practice it. Well, with that being said, I guess we have very long, bloody, vicious days ahead of us if we don't act right now. That's why I urge the Sudanese people of every color, age, tribe, religion, or gender to get back to the streets, for the dictator will give no advantage to any of us based on the categories mentioned. This testimony is in English because I want the whole world to keep their eyes wide open on Sudan on October the 30th, where the Million Man March will take place to restore what is rightfully ours as people and to prove to the world, and most importantly the militants, that nobody can govern the Sudanese people against their own will. My Sudanese people, the streets are anxiously waiting for your feet tap, and the skies are eager for your chantings to crack them open once more. 30th of October will be the day. See you then.